international headlines with Washington Post columnist and CNN political analyst Josh Rogin. Josh, good morning. Great to have you here in person. We should also add to those notes, you spent a lot of time reporting and working and living in Japan. Your reaction to this shocking assassination of someone who was beloved in Japan?
Right. Well, it's hard to overestimate the impact that this incident will have on the psyche of Japanese people, Japanese culture, and Japanese society. Having lived and worked there for years, I know that this kind of violence is unthinkable, especially perpetrated with a gun, seeing as that guns are almost non-existent inside Japan. And this type of environment where people feel safe on the streets, where politicians interact with people with little or no fear that they're going to be attacked, that environment is gone forever. And this ushers in a new era of uncertainty and lack of safety and fear of political violence that the Japanese people will have to grapple with as soon as they are done grieving, which they're not done with it yet.
Yeah. You also wrote in your column for the Post this week about the U.S. providing arms to Ukraine and what you described as hand-wringing within the White House, almost a hesitation to provide what the Ukrainians say they need to fight this war against Russia. Where is that hesitation coming from in the White House? Right.
Well, to its credit, the Biden administration has provided almost $8 billion worth of military assistance to Ukraine. That's a lot, more than any other country by far. At the same time, lawmakers and officials who have gone to Kiev and talked with senior Ukrainian leaders say that it's simply not enough. And as we see on the reports, the Ukrainians are not gaining ground. And winter is coming, and the fight in the east is about to intensify. And 8 or 12 artillery systems is simply not enough, according to the Ukrainians. And so the question is, why aren't we giving them the things they need to go on the offensive and win the war before the freeze comes? And what officials inside the Biden administration tell me is that it's not a logistics problem. It's a political problem. It's a decision-making problem, that inside the White House, senior leaders, including President Biden, don't want to escalate the war. And their theory is that if Putin starts to lose too badly, that he will escalate further and the war could spill over. But for the Ukrainians, that seems crazy because they want Putin to lose badly, and they think that a stalemate, which is what we're doing now, is a recipe for endless suffering and redounds to Putin's benefit. So the question is, are we going to give the Ukrainians just enough arms to fight to a tie, or are we going to give them enough arms to win? Right now, it looks like we're giving them just enough to fight to a tie, and for them, that's a worst-case scenario.
It prolongs the war, and it benefits, ultimately, the Russians.
Exactly.
President Zelensky has repeatedly said, he's doubled, tripled down on the idea that he's not going to cede any territory to Vladimir Putin. Given that the Russians have made gains in the eastern part of the country, what is the outcome then? Is Ukraine going to bulk up their armory and go back and try to retake that territory, or do you see a middle ground where there can be some kind of peace agreement?
Right. Well, wars end when one or both sides are so exhausted that they sue for peace. Neither side is there now. So it's clear that both sides want to keep fighting. And whether or not Zelensky ends up negotiating an agreement that allows Russia to keep some of the territory, at least for the time being, is up to him. Everyone thinks that's up to the Ukrainians. But our job is to give him the option. Our job is to make sure that he's not forced into that choice. And it may be a rhetorical or a negotiating position to say we need all the land back. But if he's going to lose the land anyway because he doesn't have enough arms, well, then he can't even negotiate. So there's a sense inside the Ukrainian leadership that the Biden administration is trying to pressure them to negotiate by keeping them just weak enough that they can't take the fight to the Russians in Russian territory. Now, the Biden administration denies that. They say they're doing the best they can. And what I found is that there's a tension inside the U.S. government over this very issue. The bottom line is, when the freeze comes, wherever the troops are, wherever the lines are, that's going to be a line that's going to be hard to thaw. And when spring comes, those realities on the ground are going to have their own effect. So time is of the essence. Time is of the essence, and time is not on Ukraine's side. That's why I think you're seeing more calls from inside the government, around Congress, and from Kyiv to give the Ukrainians the weapons that they're asking for and to give them to them quickly.
Josh, I want to pivot to some very dramatic scenes out of South Asia. This video coming from Sri Lanka showing protesters taking over the presidential palace. Sri Lanka has been undergoing a devastating financial crisis. What is happening there?
Right. Well, as we see in many places around the developing world, the combination of existing political tensions, economic instability, rising inflation, an energy crisis, and a food crisis are spilling over into outright political chaos. okay? And this is not the first time this has happened in Sri Lanka, but it's undeniable that this is connected to all of the other problems that are going on in the region and the world. And so what happens in Ukraine doesn't stay in Ukraine. And when people say, oh, well, why should we help the Ukrainians? That's over there, that's not over here. Well, this is why. It's because we live in an interconnected world. And there's a lot of pressure on these societies from the pandemic, from the economic situation, and from rising problems that have failed to be addressed by the international community. And when they spill over like this, when people are storming the parliament, that's too late. We have to do more on the front end to help these countries before they get to this point. And it's a very sad situation in Sri Lanka, and it's not too late to help them now.
And connecting the dots further, if we don't help them, those issues, those tensions wind up affecting us and our economy as well.
Exactly.
Josh Rogin, always great to have you.
Thank you.
Appreciate you.